God is God in my life. And when God becomes God in your life, you experience the peace, the joy, and the strength that comes from having a relationship with the Lord. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. When you have a good relationship with the Lord and you treasure that, you have joy that cannot be shaken. You have a peace that though it's a storm outside, you still have that peace that cannot be touched. You have a strength that though you may feel weak, you nonetheless feel that God's strength is with you. Thieves cannot steal this. Rust cannot command this. It becomes a treasure that gives to your life joy. And that is what Jesus is trying to tell us in the Sermon on the Mount. Where we do the acts to make God God in our lives, we end up desiring God. And when we desire God, our lives get blessed in ways that no one can touch or take away. Y'all all right? Yeah. All right. There's this line about the eye lamp of the body. It's sandwiched between two talks of materials and money. What in the world does this have to do? The eye is the lamp of the body. At the ancient times, in this time period, the eye was considered to be a window of the soul. So if you had a good eye, what that means is that light will come in as a clean window. So if it's a window that's dirty, light can't go in. But if it's a window that's clean, then light can't go in. So when he says the eye is a lamp to the soul, it's essentially saying that your eye is open to receiving the light. This is sandwiched in between two parts of money, which is what he's saying is God needs you to have an openness to the Lord. Otherwise, you cannot see what is valuable in life. And if you cannot see what is valuable in life, your spirit is dark. And when your spirit is dark, you end up enslaved to materials instead of the Lord. So if you cannot see the things of God or the purposes of God or the light of God in your soul and in your heart, then you might end up being unable to hear God's voice when God calls you to do things, and you might end up treasuring materials over the Lord. So this whole thing about making room for God, this whole thing about making our space for God in our hearts is so that God's light and God's message can show us what is truly valuable in our lives. And when we realize what is truly valuable in our lives, we are then able to make the right choices. And we are able to be free in our lives because we serve not God, we serve not money, but God. And that is what he's saying at the end, where he says a slave cannot serve two masters. Either he will hate the one or love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and wealth. Now, this may seem like not the passage for you because you don't have a lot of wealth. I am not Donald Trump, so this is not the passage for me. But what he's saying is, though we may not have a lot of money, in our hearts and in our minds, and this is very real, we are preoccupied with materials. It's hard not to be. There are bills, there are costs, society, the economy runs on money. It is hard not to be preoccupied about money. It's hard. Almost impossible for some. It is a reality. But what he is saying is, in our preoccupation, if we spend more time worried about our materials, and we let that worry speak louder than our faith in God, we end up enslaved to our materials. And we end up unable to experience the true joy, peace, strength, and love that God is daily trying to give us. So to be free of materials is not to say I no longer wear clothes and I no longer drive cars. But to be free of materials is to say I know what I need for when I need it, but who I truly need in my life, what matters most to me, who is God in my life, is God. And when God is God, everything falls into perspective, and you're able to make the choices that bring you freedom and peace and joy. But it is hard, And it's okay to be honest with that. It is hard. So to learn to trust in God, to learn to say, Lord, I am worried sometimes about my materials. I am worried sometimes about being provided for. I am worried sometimes about not having enough. To say, Lord, I still want you to be the source of my provision. I still trust in you. It is hard. It may be stressful. It may strain you. It may press your spirit. But when you put God as the source of your providence, you are able to see the goodness of the Lord in God's time. And God will take care of you. And when God does, not only will you have your provision, but you will have a great sense of God's love for you. And that trust is what you will treasure and love and honor. And when you treasure the trust and the goodness of God, you don't have to wait to pass on to get to heaven. For God will sit enthroned in your heart, and there heaven will already be in your heart. Amen. Let us pray. Oh Lord, this whole service we have heard singing testimonies, scripture, that remind us to place you first in our lives. Help us, O Lord, to develop a spirit where we honor you with our time, our talents, our treasure, our gifts, our everything, so that in giving to you, we create a space where we realize you are God in our lives. We ask, O Lord, more and more for this courage to give, the courage to let go, the courage to share, so that we can feel more and more that tremendous grace that is you are waiting for us just to receive. In your name we pray. Amen.